Back in 2018, your favorite rat man here was a young college student at Dum Dum State University. I was locked deep in the basement of the school's library, writing my little heart away on a piece of paper that I should have started much earlier. And in all honesty, I probably would have just fallen asleep if it wasn't for a few things, those being energy drinks, nicotine, and, Japanese jazz. Japanese jazz on YouTube keeping me very happy, very content, and very alert. I have grown very, very fond of jazz as a whole in the past few years of my life, and Japanese jazz on YouTube served as a gateway for me into the genre. And I've also learned that I am not alone in this experience, as it is truly impossible for anyone to have any unique experiences these days. But that's besides the point. Something that has truly puzzled me for the past few years is why then? Why roughly 2020-ish of all times did this Japanese jazz from the 70s and 80s get so popular? All these artists I'd never heard of gaining millions of views on YouTube as if they were some lost Led Zeppelin album. It always bewildered me, so today we will learn about what caused the resurrection of Japanese jazz and city pop. Jazz in and of itself is a bit of a strange genre. It's an inherently American genre of music that has been around for over 100 years, with its first notable home being in New Orleans, but it would eventually find its way to countries all around the world. Naturally, our European allies were quick to adopt the genre, but there were some other interesting locations where jazz would find itself becoming popular, such as Ethiopia and Nigeria, but those are a different story for a different day. Jazz culture would be introduced to Japan in the early 1920s, and the Japanese took a strong liking to it early on. But due to its quote-unquote Americanness, most of these jazz halls were closed down by the government in 1927. Yet the Japanese people are known for their innovation, and they found ways around this ban, creating jazz coffee shops where jazz lovers could enjoy a caffeine buzz and vinyl records playing the latest contemporary jazz hits. Yet again, sadly, in 1940, jazz would just be outright banned, as it was called enemy music due to the ongoing war with America during World War II. But Japan's love affair with jazz would quickly resume after the conflict. Many of the U.S. military's local bars or bars that were focused towards military personnel would have live jazz bands playing to make the soldiers feel a bit closer to home. And it wasn't just the soldiers who enjoyed the music either. The Japanese jazz enthusiasts were elated to have their favorite genre return. It wouldn't take long for a litany of Japanese jazz musicians to recreate the local jazz scene. Some even studying at the prestigious Berklee Music College would draw attention from the West as well. Over the course of the next 2 decades, Japanese jazz's identity would solidify, resulting in their own local stars. Some would be more the traditional side of jazz, such as Ryo Fukui, but the form that we, or at least I know the best today, would be the iconic genre of jazz fusion. Fusion of what, you may ask? Mostly funk. Well, why funk? Well, the contemporary Japanese jazz scene mirrored the West but maintained their own distinct sound. Back in the States, jazz had largely moved away from the hard bop, bebop, big band, and overall more traditional sounds that you picture with jazz, and had instead embraced the changing music landscape. Fusing itself with the rising funk scene of the 70s, artists like Miles Davis and Herbie Hancock would pioneer the new genres of jazz fusion and cool jazz. It's literally just called cool jazz. I'm not just calling it that, but it is cool. Strangely enough, the Japanese scene would never really break into Western markets. It was extremely popular in local Japan, though. Again, evolving into other distinct localized genres you may have heard of, called city pop, which fused the groove of jazz fusion and funk with disco and vocalists, and it had a very distinct coastal aesthetic. Acts like Cassiopeia, Masayoshi Takanaka, Tatsuro Yamashita, and Anri were selling out arenas in millions of records locally in Japan, but not worldwide. Japan would continue to enjoy the genres, but it still never really broke into the West as one would expect it to. Yet over 40 years later, that would change. In 2016, a YouTube user named Woody Allen would upload Ryo Fukui's 1976 album, Scenery, Now, he may not have been necessarily the first user to have ever uploaded this album, but it was his video that would gain notoriety. By 2020, the video would be sitting at almost 10 million views, and as of 2025, it has 14 million. In all honesty, it just seems like a stroke of chance that he decided to post the video, and it's the only thing he's uploaded to his channel. But this album would cause the floodgates of Japanese jazz to finally open into the West. Over the course of the next few years, other channels would upload, at the time, obscure Japanese jazz artists. The first I ever heard was Cassiopeia's Mint Jams, originally posted in 2018, now sits over 6 million views. Masayoshi Takanaka's All of Me would be uploaded by user Terminal Passage 4 years ago, and that video alone has over 3 million plays. Why were they so successful? Why now? Well, for one thing, the album art is incredible. Skydiving, thumbs up, perfect hair, jumpsuit, smiling Japanese man. Yeah, click into it and it's beautiful music, man. I'm sold. It was like winning the YouTube lottery. In modern terms, a mythical poll, if you will. And this new wave of fans, well, we loved it. I personally recall showing my friends these albums and them showing me ones in return. And when we asked each other, how did you come across this? It was always something like, it came up on my algorithm and it looked cool. And that is where we have our first answer. The algorithm. The algorithm favored these videos. No one really knows how the algorithm works, but we can all say for certain that a lot of views plus comments plus likes equals success. And the out-of-the-abyss nature of these videos definitely resulted in a lot of engagement. But it wasn't just good engagement that brought the genre back to life. It was really just a perfect storm of cultural phenomenons. Around the same time these albums were gaining notoriety, another subgenre had become very popular on YouTube. Lo-fi hip-hop beats. Remember her? Lo-fi hip-hop beats to chill/study to? Well, this genre had adopted a Japanese style with both aesthetics and imagery, but also source material. A decent amount of these lo-fi samples were coming from the citypop and fusion era of music, which may have been the catalyst for YouTube to suggest these videos to so many people in the first place, since they appeal to the vibey 80s late Showa era aesthetic that had already been established as popular. It wasn't just YouTube's algorithm either. As videos gained popularity, Japanese jazz and city pop started to pop up on other parts of the internet, particularly on TikTok. Around 2020, Miki Matsubura's 1980 song Stay With Me would go viral across TikTok, both in the US and Japan, and pretty much just around the world. Another reason for the increased popularity of the genres was a growing trend in Japan called Showa Retro. Showa refers to the emperor Hirohito that was alive from the 1920s till the late 80s, and Showa Retro had a particular focus on the late 70s and 80s, aestheticizing the neon lights of 1980s Tokyo, old analog Japanese tech, design, and music from that era. The Showa Retro aesthetic had popularity outside of Japan due to the strong cultural presence Japan has abroad as well. And the fact that, come on, it's 1980s Tokyo, it's just sick, look at this. All of this, again, was just a perfect storm as the US had been going through its own retro analog love affair for some time, making a crossover of Showa Retro to the West quite an easy thing to do. With the old genre's newfound success, the labels who had long forgotten about them made the wise move to reach the masses. Prior to 2020 and 2021, most of the notable city pop and Japanese jazz musicians were not available on popular streaming services like Spotify or Apple Music, at least in the West. Throughout 2021 and 2022, that changed slowly. One by one, these artists were added to Spotify and they were racking up plays. This was huge for accessibility, obviously. I remember walking around with the YouTube app running on my phone, listening to these albums, and again, I don't think I was alone. People were sharing them on social media, and people were really enjoying it. The genre had even broken out of the annoying hipster filter and had reached the general population, who also enjoyed it. Within a few years of being listed on Spotify, city pop and jazz fusion artists have put up well over 1 billion plays collectively, which is wild to consider as a majority of these artists weren't even on Spotify 5 years ago. So those are the main reasons it got popular, but so what? What's the big deal here? That some song went viral and got a lot of views on YouTube and streaming platforms? Well, the big deal is that it pretty much just resurrected these stars, and it brought back a completely forgotten genre. Vinyl record collectors suddenly wanted these records in record number. Ba-doom, tsh. And as a dork with a record collection, I'll tell you, the original pressed Japanese versions of these records, they're not cheap, and they're in very high demand still. So high, in fact, that a lot of these artists have started to be reprinted. I went to the local record shop the other day and found reprinted copies of Ryo Fukui's Scenery for sale. Just consider that these would have never been reprinted, let alone sold at an American record store in 2025 if some random dude hadn't decided to upload the album to YouTube 9 years prior. And it's not just record reprints that were a byproduct of this either. Some of these artists have just straight up come out of retirement. My personal favorite from this whole era is Masayoshi Takanaka, who you may also know as Surfboard Guitar Guy or Model Train Guitar Guy, or as I already referred to him, Skydiving Thumbs Up Perfect Hair Smiling Japanese Guitar Man. Well, he came out of retirement, and he's not just playing local shows in Japan. Mr. Takanaka, who is 72 years old, played his first U.S. concert in over 40 years this past March of 2025, largely because of the sudden love and popularity and audience size he's grown in the past few years. And by the way, it sold out instantly. Tickets were almost $300 a pop. I really tried hard to go. And the craziest one to me is Maria Takuchi's song Plastic Love, because that cracked top 10 single sold in 2022, almost 40 years after its initial release. The city pop revival and Japanese jazz revival, it's not an exaggeration. It had become a very strong form of music again. So there you have it. That's how YouTube resurrected a forgotten genre of music. In all honesty, I'm very happy they did. I used to be a gatekeeping hipster myself, but seeing how even the most NPC people I knew enjoyed this music, it really made me happy. I hope you learned something today about Japanese jazz and city pop, and if you're still here, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys later. You have a good day.